Hello everyone. Today I'm going to continue looking at some lines in the Nimzo Indian, and this is actually one of the main lines. So queen to b3, c5. This is the best reply from black. Most likely d takes on c5, knight c6, knight f3, knight e4, bishop d2, knight takes d2, knight d2. So black is getting the pair of bishops. Now takes back the pawn. And here, instead of the more common e3, the course is g3, castle, bishop g2. And yeah, basically I would say that this is the starting position of the main line of the queen b3 Nimzo. Black has different moves. I mean, some of them I already covered in previous videos. For example, if I look at now in the Lichess database, the most common move by far, and what I would also expect, is b6. And the other one is that this plans with f5, which, for example, I had against Carlsen in a blitz game. So these are the two most popular moves, but maybe not the best ones. Even though there is no problem with those moves, I mean, possession is playable, but maybe it makes White's task a little bit easier. In this game, black player who is around 2200 FIDE rating, he played bishop to e7. I mean, this move is not easy, I would say, unless black is like extremely well prepared. I mean, there seem to be more important things to do than an already developed bishop, which already like made two moves that to remove it to e7. But it's a very clever move actually to bring this bishop back to e7. There is no knight e4 attack on this bishop, and there is also no a3 b4 attack or knight b3 attack later. And yeah, black is not giving any clear idea how they want to play. So it's again extremely rare move, but it's a quite clever move in my opinion. So if you are, for example, playing Nimzo Indian with the black pieces, I would recommend you to uh, look into this variation. And yeah, so now white castled, obviously that's expected, and here black played a6. I mean, that's pretty much the logical continuation after bishop e7. So just continuing the waiting game, still not saying whether d6 will be the developing move or b6 regarding the development of the c8 bishop, but black is waiting a little bit and obviously covers b5 square, which can be nice. So now queen c2. I mean, it's logical. Queen was doing nothing too important on b3 anymore, and this is normally part of white setup. So we bring back the queen, normally then bring the rooks into the center, and then depending on what black is doing, you can play a3 b4 or knight e4, sometimes playing for c5 maybe, just have some pressure in the long diagonal and so on. So this is all normal, and here black played d6, which is certainly possible, but maybe not the move which is the most consistent with the previous play. So black could have obviously played b6 as well. So now the queen is not there. I mean, not even attacking the pawn. It was perfectly possible, and then game continues like rook d1, bishop b7, rook c1. That's the normal moves, rook c8, and let's say white just plays a3. So it's a useful waiting move. I mean, covering the b4 square, so no knight b4 is coming. Maybe white's later playing b4, removing the queen to b1, maybe playing e3. So there are still quite a few useful moves for white to make. And I mean, these positions are quite like difficult, I would say, in the sense that they are so simple in a way that it makes them uh, difficult. So it's kind of a contradiction, but like, this position is equal. Like computer is saying it's equal, but the closest comparison I can make is, for example, if you saw the game Nakamura Gukesh yesterday. So Nakamura played the drawish line, like quite well known, drawish line in the four knights coach, but he said in his after game interview that Gukesh at some moment saw some ghosts and didn't go for the most natural moves and lost very easily. And this position can be similar, that it's very possible to see some ghosts, I believe, in from black side. So maybe the d pawn can be weak. If you play queen c7, then you always have to count on knight e5, which appears to be strong at this moment. So in case of ed, there is cd5. If black is playing d6, then there could be potential problems with the d6 pawn later. I mean, not right away, but for example, white plays just e3. Again, a useful move, and queen c7 is still knight d5. King doesn't really want to go to d7 in general. It's possible, but I mean, it's not exactly clear why the queen is good there. There are recommendations from computer like h6, so it's really like a difficult waiting game, which quite difficult to master, but it just gives a full fight. I mean, there are only one pair of minor pieces traded here, so anything is really possible. One thing, I am not saying that white is better. I mean, obviously I'm not arguing with computer that white is better, but it's a practical game. It's a huge fight from this position. So that would happen after b6, but again, in general, the character is similar everywhere. I believe maybe it's a little bit different only in case of rook b8, and this is like, if black is super well prepared, like crazy well prepared, which again, I wouldn't expect at all, because this line with queen b3 is not popular, to say the least. Then, if black spends a few days, to figure out how to play, maybe this is what the computer likes: to remove the bishop, then play a6, play rook b8, and then maybe try to challenge white's position with b5. And this is a very interesting idea. So I looked at it a little bit. Obviously, it's extremely tough to come up with anything serious for white, but obviously normal move is like rook b1, black plays b5, and now, of course, the c takes b5, knight d4 is like very okay for black. So we lose this, or we rather trade this c4 pawn, which makes d5 possible later. Like something like this is very equal. I mean, still anything can happen, but it's objectively quite equal. So what looks more interesting is to take on c6, and after d takes on c6, there are two different ways. So knight e4 is one with ideas of knight d6, but this is also interesting to play c5 with the point of pawn sacrifice. So bishop c5, then knight e4. Now the queen, or knight b3, I mean, doesn't matter. So the queen has to protect the bishop either way. And after trade rook c1, white has this big positional threat of playing knight e4 and knight c5. And even after queen trade, so let's say black just opens the back rank, for example. After knight e4, take. The next move, the knight is coming to c5. And it's extremely obvious that it's only white who can play for advantage in this endgame. Such a powerful knight, probably getting the control of the d file, and yeah, I mean, computer is still saying that it's foldable for black. I mean, not big problems, but to be honest, I would be not so comfortable with black in such position. So this is an interesting idea in case of rook b8, but yeah, I mean, this is not very likely to happen in my opinion, but maybe later in some way it will be added to the course. Okay, so these are possible moves. Black decided to play d6. Also not illogical again, I believe, but so white, it's not illogical. Like, just imagine this position with the bishop on c5. Yeah, maybe let's say you don't imagine it. I will just make a few moves. Okay, black plays a6, for example, castle. Black plays d6, and now let's say rook d1. That's just losing to knight d4, so let's not make that move. Let's just make queen c2. So the point is that here the bishop on e7 is just much better piece, protecting on d6, because it cannot be exposed to knight d4 and then rook d1. Yeah, the bishop can be under attack, right? So it's just not too comfortable there. It's strangely enough, it's more comfortable on e7 in this position. It's more passive there, obviously, but you know, this is always a little bit relative, because if white plays e3, I would argue that the bishop on c5 is also extremely passive. I mean, just looking at the f2 e3 chain and doing not so much. So that's why d6 is like also completely normal here. So white correctly continued with rook fd1. And yeah, this is a little bit tricky situation for black, and black played kind of a decent move, but it was already a little bit unpleasant, I would say. So obviously after d6, one possible idea is to play bishop to d7, but it's not so good, because now knight e4 is coming with the tempo. Black protects on d6, but now there is this trick with knight takes on d6, with the point that after bishop d6, queen goes to d2 or d3. Doesn't matter, so both bishops are hanging, and in order not to lose a pawn, black takes on g3, white takes back, and this is a really great position for white. You know, there is this saying that in endgames or later middle games, queenside majority is very important or very strong. And okay, why is that? Because you know, you can see that black's king is, for example, in possible endgame very far from blockading this pawn majority, and you know, white can freely push now, and okay, black has a majority here, and okay, you have obviously a hard time believing that in the near future, with queens on the board or even in endgame, g5 h4 will be like a way to create a passed pawn, which actually the king can meet in any type of endgame. So it's just a nice advantage for white. So bishop d7 is not so good, and obviously this move of queen c7, which would be the natural developing move to protect on d6 two times before bishop d7 is coming, is again fails to knight d5, and after trade like this, white can get a nice advantage, and you know, depending on which pawn is gonna be pushed later, the knight can find the weak squares. So sorry, so it's again a nice position for white. So therefore black played queen b6 in this position, but it's a little bit unusual move. So you know, queen rather likes to be on c7, I would say, not on b6. But the idea is obviously that you know, once this knight e4 attack is coming, the queen will be not in the pin, and now black is preparing to play rook d8 over protecting on d6, and then bring the bishop to e8, and then bring the other rook to c8. So that would be a nice regrouping idea. And I believe white made some sort of an inaccuracy at this moment. He played a3. I mean, the move is very normal, but it's a little bit too slow. So here like, white is already getting somewhere, I would say, because at least black made not dubious, but a little bit strange move. So white should have just brought the last piece with rook c1. So developing with bishop d7 is still not good because knight e4 and d6 is a problem, I believe, although there is knight e5. But then maybe c5 still works, yes. So c5, and then if you would take, then there is f4. So the knight cannot really move because then the bishop falls, and it looks like that white is winning material. So yeah, bishop d7 is not that good. So rook d8 is the original plan, and now white plays knight b3. And just when black is about to comfortably finish the development, then white can strike with c5. Using the slightly superior development, and of course it's most likely should be taken, and after knight a4, let's say queen b5, knight takes on c5. Position looks like some sort of a Catalan, I would say, with this nice bishop on g2 and big pressure on the long diagonal. It's not trivial um, to neutralize this position. For example, in case of bishop e8, then white takes on d8, so now rook d8 is pretty horrible because there is knight b7. And after queen b7, bishop takes on c6, bishop c6, and knight a5. I mean, queen c6 is also good, but this is even better. So the knight is coming to c6 with an extra pawn, completely winning. So in this position, knight takes is better, but knight takes on b7 is still working. After knight b7, queen c7, attack one e7 and b7 makes sure that white is getting back the piece. I mean, computer is still doing some miraculous defense here, but yeah, very tough position for black at this moment. So this was better to immediately try to expose, with such moves the queen on b6. And this would have led to some advantage for white. a3 was too slow, and then black very nicely managed to do this regroupment, and then the position is just completely equal, in my opinion. So it's like black has no problems, no weak squares, really no weak pawns. Everything is well protected. So, and white is even a little bit exposed the queen side. Of course, it's nothing too special, but yeah. So it's just a normal game from this point. There was one more interesting thing actually. So, okay, the game continued like this. I don't really like this plan from white because we attack on the king side basically without any targets. Of course, knight g5 is not really a mistake, but cannot really lead anywhere, I would say. So knight f6, knight d4. So for example, here if black would have played h6, then most likely white has to retreat unless it's unclear whether this jumping here and there was too successful. But okay, so not too bad maybe. But black went for bishop a4 first, rook d2, and only now played h6. Yeah, and the reason I wanted to show this game further up to this moment is the following move that basically shows that even in this, so to say, slower positions or harmless looking positions, some really nice things can happen if uh, black is putting pieces on a little bit away from the king, like bishop a4. So now the light squares are somewhat weak, and there is this very spectacular move of knight f7, which should have been played. Of course, it has to be accepted by king takes on f7, and now the point knight takes e6. Like, it's really nice in my opinion because it feels like that white doesn't have enough pieces to attack. I mean, especially the rooks seem to be way out to joining from this attack. But the point is that after king e6, Black is up 2 pieces, but there is this really nice queen g6 move, cutting the king's way back to that sort of safety. And if the king has to run in the other direction, which it has to do because, you know, bishop h3 is coming with checkmating threats. So once the king is running in the other direction, suddenly the rooks are well placed, and white is playing c5. So using the pin here, and other rook is also doing a lot. And for example, after queen b5, bishop to h3 check, king c7, queen g7, and the position is already like extremely good for white. Just look at this, like the bishop is hanging cd6, with the discover check is hanging, the rook is hanging on c8, like all pieces are hanging for black, and it's already a big advantage for white. It's a very rare you know, tactical trick. I mean, that's why I wanted to show. It's really not often that you can do such things. So basically for black it's better not to take this knight, but just to remove the rook. So still a piece for 2 pawns now, but here white can, for example, just retreat with the knight and say that this, you know, many weak light squares, for example, after king g8 there is a move like c5, so even using this diagonal, maybe this diagonal, it is black who has to find some ridiculously difficult moves to stay in the game. For example, in this position, queen c7 is the only good move, which looks super counterintuitive to, you know, put the queen in the rook's file and allow cd6 maybe later at some moment. Quite difficult. And in case of dc, there is this nice move of bishop h3. So actually the threat is that these two pieces are covering those diagonals, and if at some moment knight g6 is coming, that's gonna even decide the game. So yeah, this was missed in the game, and later black won. Normal fighting game. But yeah, more interesting things opening wise are what happened before, and you know what can be the general approach in this main line. So once again, there is no question about it that if black is playing, you know, like some solid setup like this, it's, you know, white cannot expect much of an advantage, but you know the tension remains very high, but not in the usual way. So it's not like, you know, super sharp position and then you have to be very precise at every move, but it's like rather, okay, is that a threat or it's not a threat? You know, how to evaluate these things, you know, what is a good waiting move, what is not. Yeah, so I still believe this system is underestimated from the white side. So the variation is absolutely not catching up in the games which I saw in the database. I mean, obviously in the higher level people want more. I mean, that's clear, but let's say from 2500 level and lower, I mean, this could be a really decent weapon in my opinion. All right, thanks for watching this video, and see you in some other model game recap.